Hi J9. It's good to see you. Rote got here today. Super excited to see him on a Sunday stream. He might not be watching anymore, but yeah, his birthday was on Friday. Oh, thank you. Hug back. Hi Sketch. Hi. Glad you guys could make it today. How was your guys' weekend? Thank you for the hugs, guys. It's so sweet. So sweet. It's good to be here today on a Sunday. Anything can be a topic discussion, J9. My whole vision for the Sunday kind of stream thing is like, you know, I don't really do much with my time, and I don't work, and I take care of a baby, and I do school, and I clean, yeah, sure, you know, all the mom stuff, but I found that I was doing really good in my faith by myself until I read something in Galatians and in Matthew. You have a baby, that's where it is. But when I read in Galatians and Matthew, it talks about how important fellowship is, and that it will literally help people change lives, think about wrongs, become better as a community. And I realized that I wasn't doing that. And so I realized that although I might be doing good as a Christian by myself, the whole entire reason why I'm a Christian and why I believe in God is not to keep it to myself. And so if you have anything that you want to share, anything that you're comfortable with sharing, that you can share it here. And that's what I mean by safe space. And that's why I have it up in my Discord that if there is wrong language, you will be removed, because this is a space where people can come in and talk about anything. And we'll just talk about it. And we'll go through the Bible and we'll find something for it. Go ahead. What was the thing you wanted to mention? If you guys want to read the Bible verse up on the screen, it says Matthew 7:7. Just think about it, ponder over it while we kind of slip in today's study and maybe pray about it. But it's a very important verse, and I think when I went over this Bible study before, the Art of Biblical Words, this was super, it was a good comparison. You'll see what I mean when we start getting into it. J9, that is a great subject. That's crazy how God works. That's the one thing that I've been struggling with for my whole entire life, because I was taught as a very young child that if my parents said to do something, that I had to do it, and it did not matter what condition I was in. If I'm not helping someone else, then I kind of seemed it as a sin. And so J9, the reason why I say that God works crazy and in mysterious ways is because about 5 months ago, I would say, before I started this whole journey with you guys, that I figured out, and I read something in the Bible about that line. So I will try to go over my notes again somewhere in this room. There's a big notebook, and I will figure that out for you. Totally. Start making a little segment, a study lesson that we can go over, because I think that's really relatable. I think a lot of people have that issue, because we were just told to toughen up. Yeah, I would love to work on it. Just because I found it doesn't mean It's perfect. So I would love to work on it because there are still some things that I just do, and it's like, you didn't have to do that. Like, you can ask for help. So that would be a good one to go over for sure. Might be a couple of weeks from now because we did want to do the art of biblical words and then the false prophets. But I'm gonna write that down on my little sticky notes here. So it is 1:06, so I'm going to start for today after this song ends. No, it's perfect. Thank you for thinking that. We'll definitely go over that. I feel like that's a really relatable and good subject to talk about. So before we start today, I have the Bible verse that I was talking about. I will read it right now. It is on the screen in front of you. It says Matthew 7:7. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be open to you. While we were talking and just entering in today, did anyone have any revelations about that Bible verse or something they want to share about it? Go ahead. While you're doing that, I am going to turn my camera on. I am tired because I got no sleep. So I'm not like done up or anything. No, you're good. So yeah, this Bible verse up here, if anyone had a thought. It's one of those mornings. But I said I'd do Bible study. But the reason why I picked this verse that's part of the reason why I picked the verse. A lot of people know this verse, and a lot of individuals who think that the way things happen and they don't always get what they get, and they're like, but I prayed to your God and you told me blah blah blah. A lot of people say that this verse is kind of stupid and shouldn't be a thing. But that's what I wanted to talk about because we're going to go through our new Bible study, which is the art of biblical words. And that will also be under that link. Make sure you follow them along. They're pretty cool. But we're going to be studying that words kind of mean different things than they are nowadays. And there's different ways that you should be reading the Bible and a mindset that you should have when you read the Bible that will help you study more efficiently and more effectively. And also, when you study this way, I have noticed that instead of looking at the Bible or a certain passage, I'm like, wait, that contradicts blah, 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 blah. I'm thinking, context, which is super important as well in the Bible, is to read context, and he does go over that. But the reason why I picked Matthew 7:7 for today is that there is a... Yeah, exactly, J9 Sketch. I didn't even have to say nothing. But exactly, the misunderstanding from this verse often comes from the word ask. And I think many people interpret this verse and that word specifically as a blanket promise that you get anything that you ask for, be it like material wealth, success, or personal desires, blah, blah, blah. It will be granted by God, no matter what. However, as Sketch and J9 pointed out, the context and the deeper meaning in the verse suggests that asking in this specific verse refers to what aligns with God's will. If you ask for something and it aligns with God's will because you're not doing it for selfish or materialistic desires, will be given to you. Right. He's not a genie. He's not, oh, tell me what to do, master. That's not God. But the following verses in Matthew 7:9-11 actually make it clear that God gives good gifts. He does. But not always necessarily what we have asked, especially if it's harmful or not aligned with God's greater purpose. He's not a genie, he's a God. Additionally, this is what I love to point out, because nowadays when we say ask, right, it implies that if I ask you for something, it's going to happen. You are going to give it. That's kind of like how society is today. Now, if we go back a couple of years, like to where my great grandpa's generation was, it was ask and you're allowed to say no or respond. But it depends on the relationships, right? If your parents ask you to do something, you're going to obey, which should happen if it's, and there's parenting things in the Bible. We're not going to get too much into that. But the Greek word here for ask is specifically ateo, which implies asking for something specific with like a sense of dependence on the giver and not simply just requesting anything in the general sense like most people think that's what ask means. This verse reflects the idea of asking something that is appropriate within God's nature and will. Yes, it seems so, J9. And I think that's because when a lot of people have that kind of entitlement, they're putting themselves bigger than the world and then bigger than God. And I've found that if you make yourself bigger than God, because God is not, you can't put God in a box. You can't. You can put us in a box, but you can't put God in a box. He's too big, too great, too out of our own understanding to be able to compartmentalize him and put him in a box. So when we start to be higher, when we put ourselves higher than God, our life usually doesn't go right, which is very interesting. So I think it's very cool in this verse that when we talk about ask, we're not talking about, God, I ask for $1 million. No, that's not going to happen. While the verse is encouraging, if read wrong and not understood in the context of it being seeking God's will and just seeking personal gain, most people might get that verse twisted or wrong. So, with that, let's begin. Open this up here. Okay, so last week we picked the art of biblical words, so we are going to go there today. So I just want to do a little quick overview. This is 2 hours and 54 minutes. We are not going to go all over it right now. It's 5 classroom sessions. We'll do it by the session. Some might be shorter than others. Some might be longer. But I think it's very important to take our time through this and to really squeeze out all the juice we can. There is also one quiz. So this is what I like about the Bible Project. Most people don't like quizzes. I don't like quizzes. But when I'm learning something, if I get to do a quiz at the end, it really helps me because I take notes and I like schooling. But that quiz will be for you guys to complete. But anyways, that's the overview. So before I play this guy right here is Tim Mackey. He's awesome. If you guys cannot hear, if it is not playing right, if it doesn't make sense.
Welcome, everyone, to a new Bible Project classroom. This class is called The Art of Biblical Words. And if the title alone just doesn't persuade you, what else is going to? This is a class that's going to be partly skill-based. You're going to walk away with some...
I forgot to mention, he always has other people in his class so they can share their opinions. That's who those people are.
New how-to skills for how to engage your Bible. But also there's going to be some theory behind it, learning really just some basic concepts about language theory and linguistics. These are concepts that have helped me enormously through the years in learning how to study the Bible in greater depth and with greater wisdom, I hope. And so that's the goal for this class. The Bible is made up of words, to state the perfectly obvious. It's one of these obvious facts that maybe is so obvious that we don't realize all of the unspoken or unrecognized assumptions that we have about language and about words that we don't even think about when we open any book, but especially when we're opening a book that we really probably care about. If you're opening the Bible, I'm assuming most people, it's because they care about what it says and that they want to understand what it says. And the Bible's, it's over 1,200 chapters, usually in most Bibles, depending on the size of the print, 1,000 to 1,500 pages. And we're talking about hundreds of thousands of words. And words are slippery things. Much of the history of biblical interpretation, of church history, some of the greatest debates held in the history of the church, some of the greatest conflicts and controversies in the history of the Christian tradition have been debates about the meanings of words in the Bible. So as you think about building your skill set and learning how to read the Bible, different styles of biblical literature, there's narrative and poetry and discourse, different books of the Bible, different time periods, cultural background. Learning how to do word studies in your Bible is actually one of the most foundational skill sets to develop. And in earlier days, when you had to have huge stacks of concordances and dictionaries, less people did these things. But with the advent of digital concordances and resources, man, you can do so much in a very short amount of time. And so the goal of this class is supposed to get you excited about studying biblical words when you're in any given passage, but also to give you some really practical tools as you go about doing that. So in this first session, what I'd like to do is put on the table something that will get us thinking about these unspoken assumptions that we often have about words. And so to do that, what I'd like to do is read a poem, because why not? This is not your average poem, however. This is one of my favorite poems. I remember I couldn't wait till my kids were old enough till I could read to them Lewis Carroll's Jabberwocky. Lewis Carroll, anybody? This is the British author of, most famously, of Alice in Wonderland. And it's a work of genius. So people obviously mostly categorize him as a children's literature author, fantasy, but he was brilliant. He was actually really accomplished in mathematics. He went to Oxford, and he went really far in mathematics, but apparently was a little bit lazy too, and so he never won honors in any other field, but he wrote a lot of great children's books. So I'm going to read a Jabberwocky, and it will start to make its own point. I won't need to say what the point is, but here's what I want you to do. As you are listening to this poem, I want you to ask yourself, do you understand what's going on? And whether you do or do not understand what's going on, what are the role that the words of this poem play in your ability to understand or misunderstand?
Just over here on the side where it says this little box here, there will be the key points or questions that he talks about throughout the video in there. So during this next, it's going to be how can we understand what's going on in this poem, and what roles do words play in our ability to understand or misunderstand.
And we'll just have a great conversation after I finish reading it, and I'll be really eager to see what your experience is. This feels like I'm in theater again from high school. A reading of Jabberwocky. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toes did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the boro groves, and the mom raths outgrabe. Beware the Jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware the Jubjub bird, and shun the frummious Bandersnatch. He took his vorpal sword in his hand. Long time the manxome foe he sought, and so he rested by the tum-tum tree and stood a while in thought. And, as In uffish thought he stood. The Jabberwock, with eyes of flame, came whiffling through the tulgey wood and burbled as it came. 1, 2, 1, 2, and through, the vorpal blade went snicker-snack. He left it dead, and with its head he went galumphing back. And hast thou slain the Jabberwock? Come to arms, my beamish boy. O frabjous day, callooh, callay, he chortled in his joy. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogroves, and the momraths outgrabe.
Could you understand what was going on in this poem when he was reading it? Did it make sense? Right, so you can kind of get the concept, which is kind of cool. It's a poem filled with gibberish, essentially, but by knowing how he read it and kind of some of the transitioning words, I would call them, in the poem, you can kind of get what's happening. I think there's a couple of verses or lines in there where you're like, oh, well, yeah, of course he's doing that. So is there any like lines that stood out to you where there's the poem if you want to look at it? A tum-tum tree. So here's an example of what I mean. In the third paragraph, it says, he took his vorpal sword in hand, long time since the maximum foe he sought. So rested he by the tum-tum tree, and stood a while in thought. So up to this point, I'm kind of like, I feel like he has fought this Jabberwocky before. And so he is sitting and thinking and reminiscing about fighting it before, and like, you know, that moment when you're like, okay, I think I can do this, you know, giving yourself that pep talk. I think he's giving himself a pep talk by a certain tree because it was a long time before he fought this other person, and the words vorpal sword I just assume is how it looks. So even though I have no idea what vorpal means, I don't know what maximum means, I don't know what a tum-tum tree is, I can completely understand and even imagine and picture what is happening in that paragraph. Anyone want to take a guess of what's happening in this little paragraph, this scene of this poem? Sounds like he stabbed the Jabberwocky and kind of joyfully ran home after. Yeah. That's what I got. Now, J9, do you know what the word galumphing means? Like, if you were to describe galumphing to someone, dictionary definition, could you tell me what it means? Let's look at it. Galumphing. Moving in a clumsy, ponderous, or noisy manner. Now let's go back. J9 says, kinda like skipping, and she's never heard the word before. And I just told her that that's exactly what went through my head when I read this paragraph, that he was skipping, joyfully running home. And here, look at this. Noisy, ponderous. We were spot on pretty much. And that's what we're going to go through today. So we'll go ahead and watch the rest of this as they talk and have a conversation about it and see if we kind of got the same ideas as they did. Hi, Rope Man, by the way.
Jabberwocky by Lewis Carroll. I will pull the written text up on the screen. But as a poem, you know, it's meant to be both seen and heard. Did you understand what was happening? What did you do with all of the words in the poem that you maybe didn't know? But did you understand what they meant, even though you didn't know what the words were?
I think I understood, but I think I leaned on the words I did understand more to tell me what was happening, and sort of just let the other ones fill in.
Yep. So, okay. So one, sort of like your anchor points, you're saying, were words that you did know, and that they provided this environment where you said they like help you understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sort of like following those. You're like, okay, this is what I think is happening. There's other words that don't seem to contradict it, so I'm just gonna stick there.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. It's like your brain was actually creating, in microseconds, multiple possibilities for an unfamiliar word, but then it's also using the words you do know to begin to narrow possibilities. It's all subconscious, of course. But yeah. Other thoughts?
It felt like the words that I didn't know, I kind of depended on the way they felt when you said them. So snicker snack, just kind of, looking at those words or just kind of the way they were said and the form of them, and it felt almost like the words that were descriptive. If it was a word I didn't understand, there was a word I did understand to help me with that, and vice versa. So there might be an adjective that was a word I didn't understand, but there was a verb that I did understand, and there might have been a noun I didn't understand, and then there was an adjective I did understand. So it's kind of like the words kind of partnered for me.
Yeah, good. Yeah, so I'm just going to say back to you what you just said. So, Lazan, you said that the word you did know provided context, but then, Michelle, you're adding to that list of criteria that your brain's crunching through all this information, how a word feels. That was interesting. That's a great way of putting it, that's for sure how Carol crafted many of these nonsense words, was based on how they feel. So he went galumphing back, carrying the head of the Jabberwocky, and galumphing. But even the word itself makes you think of, like, why did I start doing this with my body? But that's what it makes you feel like, of like him tromping back in victory, this kind of thing. The Boro Groves are mimsy. But you think of like a tree, right? Like waving in the wind, and some kind of tree doing some kind of movement. Yeah. So the feel of the words, familiar words. Other thoughts?
So when you first told us to listen, and it was for children's literature, I was like, oh, this is going to be easy. And then all of a sudden, with the first sentence, I had to shift to go, okay, I got to work to try to understand this. And I think that the patterns of multiple times when a word that I didn't understand, I was able to, the second time I heard it, gather a little bit more information. And so when you ask the question, did I understand it? I see it as a continuum. Like at the beginning, I don't think I understand what's going on, but as it went forward, I think I'm grasping something. And I bet if we reread it again,
it's a hard book, just like this poem of Jabberwocky by Lewis Carroll, and we have to read it over and over again to understand different words and meanings, and just because there's words in the Bible and you're like, I have no idea what that means or what he means, and Paul is probably one of those authors where you're like, huh, Paul, what do you mean? And so taking it and reading it over and over again can help you allow to understand the deeper meaning or more ideals and things that come from those verses, which is crazy because it's a great tool to use in anything.
We're using those same words, and I'm getting a little bit more of the feel of what's happening.
Yeah, good. So I'll say back to you, you're adding a third piece, which is the flow and topic begin to cut off certain avenues of understanding and focus the meaning of unknown words in a certain direction. But it went from very wide open to each kind of paragraph goes on. Maybe I should have asked this at first. If you were to try and retell in your own words what you a sentence or two, not detailed, but what happened?
I had to let him finish the laugh. Anyways, that's a great question. So how about we answer that? If you guys could retell into about 1 or 2 sentences what happened in this poem, what would you say? I would section it into about 3 sections. The first one's the first 2 paragraphs. When I read it, I gave the Cliff Notes version, J9. Yeah. When I read it, I think there's this village, and it seems depressing. And the dad of somebody's son, warns him of the reason why the village is being depressed. And that's the first section. The second section is the son taking action. He took his Vorpal sword. He is going after it again. And as he stood, he kills it, blah, blah, blah. And then the last section's down here. He walks back to the village and they celebrate in the victory. The more you read something, because the first time I read this, I gave the Cliff Notes version to J9. I was like, oh, well, he went out, killed something, came back, and they're like, yay! But the more you read it, the more you kind of see how it starts the beginning the same and ends the same. And, like, the beginning shows a moment, the middle's the climax, and then the end, right? Where it's like, so it's like a story. And so the more I read it, the more I understood kind of maybe the emotions behind the text with the people. Like, you just start to kind of visualize it more. Their responses were here.
What happened in Jabberwocky? That's maybe an unfair question because you just heard it. And so now that was like, 5 to 10 minutes ago. Does anyone want to attempt?
There was an adventure. A kid goes out and, whoever this parent figure is just tells him, be careful. And then he goes out and he gets in this battle with a Jabberwocky. He comes back with his head. That's what I always think.
Yeah, it's got a David and Goliath, actually, feel to it. Yeah, that's about it, isn't it? Now, I think any combination of words can do any combination of things. So even in this very short poem that is full, I haven't done the numbers, 30% of words that are truly nonsense words. Maybe a little less, maybe 25%. But the 25% of nonsense words are like really key words. But yet somehow the topic and flow, the familiar words, and then the feel of the words, your brain is just chugging on all this and narrowing down possibilities of meaning. And you get that it's this epic adventure, of the boy sent to chop off the head of the Jabberwocky. Well, to beware the Jabberwocky, and then it comes burbling as it came, and so on. Okay, so what a wonderfully complex and it feels like almost magical thing that human communication is. I mean, really just ponder what just happened there. Somebody from, Lewis Carroll from 150 years ago, we share the same language, but he just made up a bunch of nonsense words, and they're able to speak from the past, and we can understand actually a pretty detailed outline of this fantasy story. That's amazing. Through writing little symbols, little like code symbols on a page. And then we learned that code, when we were young and have grown up with it, and here you go. That's what a marvelous thing human communication is. It can bridge cultures. It can bridge gaps of time, even if we have very little to go off of. So this is a wonderful example of how much can be communicated across culture and time, even if you don't know much of what's happening, or you don't understand the meaning of the words. So you could say one takeaway here is meaning has an important relationship to words, but there's more factors for communicating meaning than just words. Words are indispensable, but you need more than just words. So when you are studying language, you have to know words, but then you have to account for a whole bunch of other things too. So that's an example of how much is communicated through words that I don't understand, let's flip it over. Let's talk about how little can be communicated through words that I think I do understand. And a good example of this, I think for many people, is the Bible. There are many words that are odd or new or unfamiliar to people in the Bible, but most English translations on the popular level that are on the market right now are aimed at somewhere between a 7th to 10th grade level of English vocabulary and sophistication. That's interesting to think about. So lots of familiar words in the Bible, but isn't it interesting how little I can understand what's going on, even though I know all of the words? It's the exact opposite of Jabberwocky. So for here, I'm going to take a very familiar text, and we're just going to problematize this thing. It's the opening paragraphs of the Bible in Genesis chapter 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was formless and void, and darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was moving over the surface of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening and there was morning one day. Then God said, "Let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." And God made the expanse and separated the waters which were below the expanse from the waters which were above the expanse. And it was so. God called the expanse heavens. There was evening and there was morning, a second day. How you guys doing?
I think it's very interesting to read it after the Jabberwocky poem, because you understand that basically what it's saying is God created the heavens and the earth, created the water. 2 days have passed. He made morning and night, and now there's this expanse. But then after reading Jabberwocky, you're like, he says water's a lot, and now there's expanse above and below. So it's very interesting to think about. Right, exactly, like the exact words, just like J9 said. She said, "I think I understand, but that's just going to Catholic school. I haven't thought of the exact words for a while." And I think that's super key, because she said exact words, Like, we think of concepts and meanings in sentences, but when have we actually broken it down word for word? And that's tedious, then you're not reading the whole language. But it's still a part of our language, and even though it is tedious, it's helped me. It's very good, J9. But let's go ahead and see what else they say about this Genesis.
Familiar text. So I almost am having to ask you to imagine yourself back to a first reading or a first hearing. Maybe let's start with what seems clear. If you were going to try and give a basic plot development, like we did for Jabberwocky, how would you reframe it in your own words?
So God was creating. There was something. There was chaos, and God created something. He brought order. And when I read this, like, I think it's hard for me, because I think of what I grew up thinking about those words, and then I'm trying to learn about what did they actually mean. But I think it's like there's two places that are being created: heavens and earth. I don't know necessarily what to do with the expanse. So something else is there. But it's also, the expanse is called the heavens as well. So it's somewhat separate, but somewhat also the same.
Yeah. So let me name something and see if it's what you're trying to put your thumb on. There's something odd happening in that in the opening sentence, God creates the heavens and the earth. But then later on in day 2, when God creates this expanse, and he makes it and calls it heavens, And just on a very simple observation is that didn't he already make the heavens? I thought the heavens were made in the first sentence. But now they're being made again. And why are they called the expanse and then the heavens? Are you with? Is that kind of what you're trying to put your thumb on?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, it's a little bewildering. Because you're like, I think I know the meaning of the word heaven, but the way it's being used here, yeah. Other observations or thoughts about the language and features like that? Yeah, Lasan.
When, God created the heavens and the earth, and when you say earth, you're like, oh, the planet. I know what that looks like. I know what that is. But then for it to be formless and void, what if it's formless and void, then it's not anything, but it is something because it's the earth. So the idea, and then he starts naming things, and you're like, I don't really know.
Yeah, but no, that's excellent. It's exactly the observation with the problems in English here. The word earth means a pretty specific thing, in modern English at least. A globe, right? A sphere, that's what you're talking about. So if earth means globe or a sphere is by definition the form of a sphere. So it's almost a contradiction in terms in English to say the earth was without form. But there you go. Yeah. So the earth, and then your brain goes, well, I guess either earth was like this undulating blob. I remember the first time I was trying to think about this, I had some undulating blob hovering in the universe. Okay, yeah.
I started at the beginning, because when we're kids, we're told heaven is the place where God lives. And so it's like, but if in the beginning he creates the heavens, then he was there before that got here. So, and then it's like you say the earth was formless and void, and you look at that and go, well, if there was nothing, like in your mind, you're thinking there was nothing and then there was something. But if there was nothing, God was already there. So there was nothing. So there wasn't nothing. So it's just, so from the very beginning, you're just going, wait, this isn't a beginning. There was a beginning before the beginning. And you literally just in these first 8 verses just fall into Lewis Carroll's hole.
Yeah.
And you just gotta go, what's going on here? And it's just...
Totally. But here's the thing is, you know all the words.
But it doesn't help.
That's what's so weird about it.
That you know all the words.
Correct.
The
That's
words
right.
are just not helping you at all.
Okay, so let's name this. We've had the exact opposite experience, about the same amount of text. We know all the words, but somehow they're being used in a way that just creates difficulty of understanding. Flip it over, we read a poem where you don't know a quarter of the words, but you could tell, you could feel what was going on, and you've understood it. And you can feel what's going on here. Renji, you said there was disorder. God's creating, there's disorder, and then there's order, but I don't quite know how to account for the precise details of that order. So once again, what a wonderful and complex thing that language is and that human communication is. So we've already named them. Heavens, in the main meaning for heavens, you can look it up in any dictionary of contemporary English. The number one meaning of heavens is some sort of non-material, otherworldly space where the deity lives, or where God's presence is. And if I bring that meaning, because it's my language, and I see the Bible in my language, and I see that word, problems abound. Okay, so formless and void, we talked about that. The expanse. Oh yeah, when I think of an expanse, I think of standing on the Grand Canyon, or like on the edge of something, and you see a big gap. But usually for me, an expanse is horizontal between me and a huge expanse. And what I'm being told here is of an expanse that's vertical. And between waters below, which I guess is an ocean, I don't know. And then waters above, rain clouds. I'm trying to imagine, like I'm recreating what I first thought of this many years ago. So all of these words that seem familiar become real difficult to account for. Okay, so you guys, welcome to the wonderful world of words and of the need for having some kind of ability to do something with this ambiguity that's created through biblical words. So that's essentially what we're going to do in the rest of our sessions. Because if you've been reading the Bible very long, you know this feeling of like, I get most of the words, I don't know what's going on right now. do you guys know what I'm guessing? You know, I can't be alone here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there's more factors than just words that goes into meaning. We've kind of already experienced that. But yet, words are like a foundational factor for meaning. And so learning to both understand biblical vocabulary, knowing where to go to understand what things mean, knowing how to go about, like a workflow for problem to where do I go next, partial solution, what's a deeper way I can do some study here. There you go. That's what we're going to do in the sessions to follow. But the main point here is that words are both the foundation for understanding, but can also be the main problem in understanding. And that there's a slippery relationship between words and meaning. They communicate something, but they can also obscure meaning at the same time. And so our understanding of what words are, of how they communicate, and how I go about studying them, this is like really, really important if you want to take your own study and reading of the Bible to the next level. That was basically, I could have just said that, but I wanted to read Jabberwocky and talk about it with you.
Okay. That was kind of my first response too. I was confused. I was like, well, God's there, so. Definitely. Yeah, those are all really good points. Let me just. Oh, it's crazy. That's 2025. We'll go through a couple of ideas and thinkings and how to approach the Bible and the words that come through that, and find out that we actually don't think like an encyclopedia, I think like a dictionary. So we're going to try to reverse that thinking into a different train of thought to be able to understand better and to use more resources when we're studying the Bible about those words. But after every stream, I will have a couple of things that you will need to do, or if you don't want to, you don't have to, but things that you will think about over the week to share next Sunday before we start our session. So now that we've learned about how words can mean very different things in different contexts, I want you guys to think of a biblical word we use often. Share it next week, what the word is, and when you learned about it, if anything surprised you. Like, did you think about that word differently than what the Bible contextualizes as? Did you think about it like the same? What surprised you about the words you chose? And the word you picked, does it mean something different socially now? I like to use the word socially as in like society, because I think there is social justice and biblical justice. There's social love and biblical love. So does this word you picked mean something completely differently? And the third one is, why do you think words might have been misshapen in today's society from the Bible, particularly? Like, why do you think the words have changed and mean something different? So I'm going to keep these up here for a little bit so you guys can think about it, write it down, maybe whatever you want to do. But keep this for next week. We're going to talk about this next week at the start of the Bible study stream before we go into the next video. So if you get those done, go ahead and do that. Anyways, so think about those next Sunday before. And then So anyways, that's the introduction to Art of Biblical Words. We're going to be learning a little bit more about it. Good job, Sketch, for catching that all by your lonesome. Good job. About this verse again, Matthew 7:7, it says, "Ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, and knock and it will be opened to you." Any new prayers for today, for this week? We have a lot of prayers from last time. We'll just pray over you. Of course. Anything is a great topic for prayer. We're going to pray for those things and then also for the prayers here today. So if you guys will bow your heads with me in prayer, I will go ahead and start. Dear Lord Almighty, we come before you today to pray over J9 and everything that is going on in her life, everyone who's involved in her life, everyone who she meets, even the close or the afar. I pray that she will become better, feel better. Everyone around her will be blessed and been given your grace, Lord. I pray for Etiquette's grandma, that when she does go into hip surgery, the 16th, that she will be fully prepared and it be safe and no complications throughout the surgery. And I pray for everyone around her to help her improve and to help her get better when she is going through this time. I also pray for J9's family specifically today, Lord. It seems like there's some issues or some troubles, and I just hope that you place your hand over their hearts and guide them with your wisdom and give angels over their house and over their family members to protect them from the evil forces that always try to get us nowadays. And I pray for that and their family to be blessed and safe. I also pray for J9's little kitty to be healed and to feel better, whatever is going on, to just have that cat be comfortable once again, Lord, and find peace in that. And I want to praise today for all the things that we've been blessed with from the previous weeks, and to pray for those that are still ongoing, for the surgery, for Annie the dog. Thank you for the improvement on her, Lord. We just praise you for that. For J9 and her family still, for Sketch and his daughter, for all of them to be brought peace, and for us to be closer to you, Lord, and through these Bible studies be able to be open and acknowledge things that maybe we wouldn't want to, but to help us ultimately get closer to you, Lord. And glory be you, God. Amen. So that is the session for today. Amen. Thank you for coming out. I will be streaming Wednesday as well. Phasmo Bingo. If you're in, we have a leaderboard already. People are winning. We got until the end of the next stream this month. Not next stream. The end of the last stream of this month to be on the top of the board. That's the end of the stream. I hope you guys have a great week. I hope to see you Wednesday. That would be nice. And yeah. Bye guys.